Okay, we want to solve this equation. This time we have a 0 on that. And again, we're going to solve it using these two methods, grouping method and also the bottoms up method. So first, what we notice here is everything is divisible by 2. So I'm going to make the problem easier by dividing everything by 2 to get 0 equals 2x squared minus 19x plus 35. By doing that, it's good to do that anyway, because bottoms up method you actually have to do that way first. You have to make sure there's no common factors in order for bottoms up method to work. But for grouping method, you could have actually used the original one to do that, but by dividing both sides by 2, it actually makes the problem easier because now you have smaller numbers to work with. So we're still going to do the same thing with grouping method. You want to take the first number and multiply it by the last number. And so we get 2 times 35 is going to give you 70. And you look for two numbers that multiply to make 70 but add to be negative 19. So both those numbers are going to have to be negative because two negatives will make a positive, and we want both of them to add up to be negative 19. So if you go through the whole list of factors of 70, the one that's going to work is going to be 5 and 14. Now both of those are going to have to be negative. Negative 5 times negative 14 equals positive 70, but when you add that together, it equals negative 19, the middle term here. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to rewrite the middle term in terms of these new factors. So instead of negative 19, I'm going to write negative 5x and negative 14x. It does simplify back to the original one, and we didn't change anything by doing that. So now, with this, negative 5 and negative 14, we need to group the first two and the second two separately now that we have that separated by our two factors. For the first one, the only thing you can pull out is an x. So I'm going to pull an x out of here, and when you pull an x out, you get 2x minus 5 left over. These two, we're going to pull out a number as well. If this number is negative, I definitely want to pull out a negative, and I can pull out a negative 7 from both of those because that goes into both of those there. You get the same thing. You get 2x and minus 5 because you have plus 35 divided by negative 7 will give you a minus 5 there. So the one that repeats right here, I'm going to go ahead and write that out front, 2x minus 5. I'm left with x minus 7. So what you want to do next is you're going to take both of these individually and you want to set them individually equal to 0. If you do, you're going to get your two answers of 5/2 and you also get 7. So 5/2 and 7, those are the two answers that solves the first equation. So I'm going to do the same thing with bottoms up method. For bottoms up method, once again, we want to use this version right here, the one that is already reduced. We already got rid of the 2 from both sides. You want to do that one. You don't want to have any more common factors when you do the bottoms up method. Now that we have that, again, we take the first number, multiply it by the last number, and the first number is going to disappear. So you get this. You get x squared minus 19x plus 70. The product goes in the end there. We want to look for two numbers that multiply to make 70 and add to be negative 19. Those are the same numbers we already set up here. That's going to be negative 5 and negative 14. What you have to do is make sure you remember to divide by the number that originally disappeared. So the original was a 2 there. We bring it back and we write underneath each of our two factors there. We want to reduce the fractions. We get x minus 5/2 that does not reduce, and you get x minus 7. Now, normally if you're factoring, you would want to move the bottom number and bring the bottom up because it's called the bottoms up method. However, I don't need to do that in this case. If you're doing bottoms up method and you're setting it equal to 0, you can actually just take each one right now as it is, and you can set both of those individually equal to 0. So again, you do x minus 5/2 equals 0 and x minus 7 equals 0. We don't have to worry about moving the bottom up. We can, but then that means that we have another one that we have to solve for. This is going to be easier to solve in this form. So you're going to get x is 5/2 and you're going to get x is equal to 7. Same answers that we got for the first one.